Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pie Show. This is episode 11. Ooh, so close to the end of my show. This episode is going to be called Gender Equality. This is going to be a hard episode because this one is going to be about genders. So, this episode may not be for non binary people because when I am referring to women or girls or she, that sort of thing, I'm referring to females. And when I say he or men or boys, I'm referring to males. Okay? And so I understand that that's more binary standard. And that's why I don't know if this episode's going to be for you, but if you still want to watch it, it's still here for you. And that's totally okay. But when it comes to gender equality, it's a touchy subject, and it's understandable why. And so really, what I'm going to try to get into in this episode is basically how both genders, maybe it's the best way for genders to act in society, to act in a relationship, and to act once becoming parents. So that's really what I'm going to try to focus on, and I want to just acknowledge that there are people who are gender neutral, there are people who are, on the spectrum of gender, and I understand that that's a thing, but for me that's hard to fully understand. I mean, I get it, but I haven't really experienced it that much in my personal life. So, and it's just not really relevant to what I'm going for in this episode. We are going to be talking about equality for men and women in societies. And as it appears currently, a lot of our societies seem to favor men, and that men seem to have an advantage in societies. And this is sort of a strange thing. I suppose maybe this comes from just history and the way things have evolved. It always seems that men have sort of just taken charge and taken what they want, and what were women to do, really. If you consider the idea of what would happen if there was an all-out war that broke out between men and women, it's kind of like, who would you expect to win? I mean, physiologically, it seems like men would have the advantage if there were a war between men and women, just because of the hormones they're given are different and seem to sort of help them with things like battling and strategizing for battle and whatnot. Not that women aren't good at fighting, just that men sort of are more well equipped for that sort of thing. And I think in general, it isn't for the purpose of a battle between men and women. That's just sort of, I don't know, I don't necessarily have a reason for why that is. But the point is, in societies, it does appear that men have the advantage, and that, a lot of the reason why I say this comes from the fact that it seems that men are rewarded for just about anything, really, whether it's good or bad, and they are not punished as much, I feel like, as women are, unless it's like a really big bad thing, and it's caught, they're caught at a good time, they're caught at the right time. Anyway, so men seem to have the advantage. They're rewarded for a lot, they're not punished for a lot, they are given jobs a lot easier, and they get better pay for the same jobs that women have, and seems like people would rather, hang out with men than women, and men are obviously, encouraged for being strong and smart, and most of the time when we talk about men, it's like, if you think about like what's the worst thing that people have to say about men, that they're like rude or they're mean or something. But some of the words that are used towards women are oftentimes much more harsh, and I don't even want to use those words. I think you know what I'm talking about, though. And women are oftentimes they're sort of punished more often, more frequently. They're sort of encouraged to do bad things, I would say, and people seem to seek out women for mainly one thing and one thing only. And that's not exactly a good thing. It's only really a good thing in like one circumstance. And so women have it hard when it comes to societies, right? It's like they're just looked down upon, or they're looked as like the lesser gender or the less useful gender, and it does seem very unfair. And how do we seek out equality in societies, right? That's really a big question that I would like to be able to answer myself. And I can give you guys my opinion, but I can't just answer that question for everybody, because everybody has their own opinion, and they may or may not agree with my opinion. And so if you were to ask my opinion, how do we, seek out equality? Where I would start for that, number one, self-restraint. It is so important to have self-restraint in societies, because when you have so many people around you, it's so easy to act on your impulse or your instinct, which oftentimes your instinct or your impulse is going to tell you to do something, that benefits yourself, and it doesn't benefit the people around you. And most of the time for glory for yourself or something like that, or to gain something that you want personally. And self-restraint is something that's very important to counteract that, in order to sort of seek out what's best for everyone, or what's best for both men and women in our societies. Another thing is learning to value women more, at least as equals. And I think our society honestly is making good steps towards that, in a lot of ways, like in our movies and whatnot. There's a lot more women in movies and more of the main roles, as opposed to like a secondary role or like a support role. I think the second most important thing would be respect. Respect for one another, and respect of each other's boundaries. Now, I think a lot of people will make fun of each other, and I think sometimes, that's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of, elbow jabbing at each other, but sometimes joking can go a little too far, and sometimes it comes from a place of disrespect. And I think that is really not okay, the okay kind of joking. And sometimes it's not even joking. People just disrespect each other based off of their gender or something like that. And it's important to break that stigma, to no longer have that barrier between, who's better, who's worse, men or women. We really don't need to compete like that. But third, and most important, is just to learn to love each other more, and more so platonically, right? To seek out relationships, especially sexual relationships. These things are things that take time, and they should take time. And it's hard for people because we all get very impatient, especially in our society today. It's so easy to go against your impulses, because most of the time what you want is only like a button click away on a computer or on your phone or whatever. And that's why self-respect is number one, is because we really need to have that in order to really understand how to respect one another, which is number two. And then if we can do those two things, we're on our way to loving each other quite a bit. And platonic love is something that's, from what I've noticed, is very difficult between men and women just in general. And I think a big part of that is sexual tension. It's just, it's difficult because inherently people want to seek out those sexual relationships. And for the most part, I think our world would just be a lot better at, having equality between men and women if we didn't have so much sex between men and women. And in general, or just in general, really, like lust is a sin for a reason, in my opinion. And I've seen a lot of the, why that is in the course of my lifetime. And I think it really is a big part of why women are not valued more, is because most of the time the only reason people value them is for sex, which is wrong. When it comes to equality for men and women in relationships, this is different. And it's almost kind of impossible, really. When it comes to relationships between men and women, more heterosexual relationships, I feel that with a healthy relationships are very good. They're beneficial to both men and women. The reason equality is so difficult in
heterosexual relationships is because oftentimes I think that women kind of have the advantage when it comes to relationships. And I think this is because, for the most part, women are more desirable for relationships as the gender that is desirable, and thus, men tend to compete for women. And so that means that women have a lot more options a lot of the time for finding men. And I feel like the more beautiful the woman, physically attractive the woman, the more options she has for finding a man to seek a relationship with. And that's just sort of societally and historically the way that it's been. And I think also just evolutionarily, that's just how it is. And so for men, it can be a little bit more difficult to find a relationship and make a relationship last. And, so they have to, sometimes it seems like they kind of have to work harder to keep a relationship. And, women kind of have the opportunity to be a little bit more choosy. And when they have a man, they don't necessarily need to focus as much on that man's needs as they do, meeting their own needs and seeing whether or not that man meets their needs. And so that's where the inequality comes from. And I don't really see any easy way to make that so that's no longer a thing. Like to seek out equality in relationships for men and women. I don't know if that's ever really going to be possible. I think that if men were to not seek out women so much, that would maybe be a good thing. But at the same time, it seems kind of inevitable that it's more likely that things will stay that way. That women will be more desirable and men will seek them out. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, I mean, it is kind of like an inequality in that sense. But what I'd like to say is that I think that relationships in general are a healthy relationship is beneficial to both men and women. I think that because just in general, men and women will learn from each other. In a relationship, they'll learn about how to be together well. They'll learn about their what makes them great and what their downfalls are. There's a lot. A healthy relationship has good communication, and so with good communication and when you're really close with someone, you end up learning a lot about the other person and you learn a lot about yourself. And so that's what really makes them beneficial. And the contrary to that would be a unhealthy relationship. And I would say, as a person, do your best to avoid an unhealthy relationship because it's really only going to be, it's going to be more of a weight for you. It's going to weigh you down. It's going to slow you down in life. And it's just not good. It's just not good for you or the other person. And so that's why I think that, basically what I said in the last part with, how to seek out equality for men and women in society is basically like, having patience, having self-control, respect, and love, more so platonic love. If we were to work on these things in societies, but also in our relationships, we would, I think, really get a lot better relationships with each other in societies as well as interpersonal romantic relationships. I think romantic relationships will benefit from these things because we wouldn't need to, we wouldn't feel like relationships are so like hard to let go of. Like, I think it's important for people to be able to have, romantic relationship with someone and then, be able to end it if it's not working out. And it shouldn't be such a huge emotional, impactful thing. If people can if they have more self-control, if they have more respect, I think it wouldn't be as big of a deal, and we'd just be able to move on to the next person and see, is this a better fit for me? Is this a better fit for my partner? And that's what I think would be good for relationships between men and women. All right, and then maybe just the last thing I wanted to say about relationships is basically like, I think it's important for both men and women to look back on the relationship, kind of reassess after maybe like a year or 2 or 5 or whatever. If you've been in a relationship for a long time with someone, it's good to kind of look back and say, what do I want to do now? What's the next step? Do I want to continue to be with this person? Do I want to no longer be with this person, if you think you want to continue to be with that person, maybe consider, marriage and stuff, because that's kind of a big next step for people, and it's kind of like that's how we prepare for the future, for ourselves and for the ones that we love. And so, if you think that it's getting closer to time where you want to get married to the one that you're with, maybe either have that conversation or just try coming up with a way to propose to the other person. And I think it's important for both men and women to consider this, because I think traditionally men have been the ones who would propose to women, but that's not necessarily the way that it needs to be. Women can also propose to men. There's nothing wrong with that. I even know a couple that, that's what happened. The woman proposed to the man, and I think they haven't quite gotten married yet. But I don't know. I think they're a pretty good couple. So my point is that with certain things that we're used to in history, with genders like men proposing to women and stuff, it doesn't have to be that way. We can break out of that if we want to. Really, I think a lot of the time the reason that men are the ones who do the asking out women and proposing to the women, and that women don't do that as much, as I think that men sort of have not as fragile of an ego as women do. I think everybody has an ego, but I think for the most part, rejection hurts everybody, But I think men realize after a while that if they don't ask out women, then they just won't end up with women, right? Because women are the more so desirable gender, like I was talking about before. That's kind of how women have a little bit more of an advantage in relationships. It's just that most of the time men kind of have to make the first move, and it doesn't need to be this way, right? But it's just basically all men would have to stop asking out women first in order for men to start being asked out first by women, I think, or women would just have to make that decision themselves. But it seems like the majority of people, it seems like men go ask out women first, and that's just the way it is. And it doesn't need to be that way, but that's how it is for now, it seems. Hello, everybody. So the last part of this episode, we're talking about families and gender equality within families. And this one I think this one's a lot nicer, because I feel like there is no advantage. I don't feel like men have the advantage or women have the advantage in families. I feel like by the time that you're starting a family, if you're the age of, the parent or someone who, is wanting to have kids, hopefully by now you have learned those three things we were talking about in the first two parts, self-control, respect with one another, and love for each other. I think families have a lot of that, at least really good families do. And I think that if you are someone who is beginning a family and you don't exactly have those things, I think that basically starting your family, having kids, eventually you will learn those things. I think it just kind of comes with time. Some people it may take them like a lot of time to learn that, even to the point where their kids have already left their house. By the time they finally learn, self-control and respect for one another and love for each other. I know that not every family is perfect, and even my family, we have our good days for the most part, and then some bad days. But I love my family, and I'm so excited because I get to start a family of my own. My wife and I are soon to have a little baby boy, and so we're just very excited about that. And one of the things I want to talk about was how basically, from one perspective, you might think that men have the advantage in a family, right? Because you could think, well, men don't have to bear the children and deliver the children, but that can kind of be, one way I think about it is that sometimes because the men can't do those things, they don't get to be as close to the baby until a little later on, and then at times even women can't work because of that time, because it's you got to recover after delivering a baby, and that means that they can kind of be more closely having a relationship with their child, the little baby. And so for that reason you could think, well, it's almost like the women have the advantage in the families, but that's not necessarily true either, because the women in families, they do a great job delivering the children and everything, and all that. But even so, they kind of, it's good if they can rely on their husband, the man of the family, and without the man of the house, I don't know. It's certain values may not be, as easily taught as a single parent. I like to think that the man of the house can sometimes be helpful for doing various tasks that maybe might not be as easy for the woman of the house, but that doesn't necessarily mean that one gender has the advantage over the other in a family. I think if you're really doing a good job with your family, then you will see the equality all the way around for your family. And if you are not seeing that, good communication can sometimes help you lead you back to equality. And so it's just important to seek that out, to try to create an environment in your own home where you can feel like things are equal, things are even, and everybody's happy. I know that I try to do that in my own home. I think that in general, for a lot of people, having babies is a very humbling experience, because before you have a child, I think that you have a lot more freedom, and so the choices that you can make good ones or bad ones for yourself. But once you have a kid, you really, if you care about your kid, you have to take care of them. So you have to make good choices for yourself in order to be able to help make good choices for your kid. And that's, I don't know. It's I just think it's a beautiful thing. Really love families. I love being a part of the family that I've gotten to be a part of growing up as a kid myself. And I'm very excited to start my own family with my wife. It's just, it's an exciting thing for me. I love the feeling of love. I love being able to give love and receive love. And I think a family is just the right place for that. I think that families that's just what it's all about. You gotta have a lot of love to have a good family. And so, yeah. Anyway, I think that our son will make a little bit of an appearance in the next episode, what will most likely be the last episode of the Pie Show, and that will be coming up, hopefully by the end of this year. And so, yeah, I'm excited for that too. I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching the Pie Show, and if you're a big supporter, maybe I will make one more episode beyond the next one that I'm going to make, but I think for the most part that's going to be my next episode, is going to be my last episode. So this would make this episode the second to last one, and I don't know, how did I do? Did I do all right? Okay, let me know. Yeah. Anyway, I love you guys, all of my viewers out there. I'd love for us to become more closely, friends, almost like a family ourselves someday. And I hope that we can create a world with equality together, for genders, for races, for everything, really. I just love equality. I do love math. This is called the Pie Show because I do like math. And so equality is a huge part of math. It's really what makes math what it is. So I think let's make equality grand scale, even bigger than just equality for every thing on our planet, but even beyond that, out into the stars with all the aliens and stuff. Let's see if we can make equality like that big, maybe someday. I don't know, it would be cool. It may already kind of be out there, but we got to do some things as humans to join that whole deal. Anyway, okay, I think this is all for now.